Hi everyone, my name is Tiffany. I'm from Beijing, China. I go to a private university.
Hello everyone, this is Akshay. I'm from Mumbai, India. I go to a public university.
My name is Fatima, originally from Nigeria. I go to an HBCU, meaning historically black colleges.
My name is Thi Nguyen, and I'm from Vietnam. I go to a community college.
I want to be able to influence the world, and the United States stands out as a pace setter in research. I'm so excited about being here.
In my opinion, US degree is extremely impressive, and that makes studying abroad in the US an excellent choice.
There are many types of institutions in the United States.
I think it's just so unique that there's so many to choose from.
I had to make a major choice between the type of university that I was supposed to attend. The major factor that I considered was the scholarship opportunities that were available and the alumni network.
I've heard so much about the HBCUs as historically black colleges. I chose those because I wanted a school that really represents me.
As a humanities student, I prefer seminars instead of lectures because I find myself better understand the material if we get to discuss it in class. That led into my decision of going to a private university.
I chose a community college to study because most of the community college offer affordable costs, and they often offer a lot of majors you can choose from.
Some of the things I find that are in common between different types of institutions in the US is that the curriculum are more comprehensive.
It is more practical oriented that really helps you get hands-on experience about what you're learning.
Students can benefit from forward-thinking technology and modern facilities.
And I love the diversity, the fact that it's a melting pot for everywhere in the world. And so it's an awesome experience for me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our today's session. We are very happy to welcome you to our second webinar for January. And as we've said in our previous session, we are going to talk specifically this month about research phase. So we know that the many students which are now focusing on their applications for studies in the US, they would do their research, and we decided that this month is going to be dedicated to some steps that you might also consider during your research process. And first of all, I would just like to remind you once again that Education USA Virtual is here to help you with interesting webinars, courses, and MOOCs that you can find on our official website. We have a lot of interesting articles. We have monthly webinars, which we conduct on different topics. And additionally, you can find on our website the link that will redirect you to your Education USA Center in the region. So in case if you are seeking help from our advisor, you can find the nearest Education USA Center, and our Education USA advisors will assist you. So during our today's session, we're going to talk about rankings. And we know that this topic is really important and really relevant for those students who are in their research process, as we've said. And today we have as an invitee Kristen Crosby from Kristen Crosby, the Director of International Admission from Ohio Wesleyan University. Thank you so much, Kristen, for being with us today. We really appreciate that you are introducing us to some interesting facts and myths about rankings, because we know that a lot of students would be worried during this research phase about ranking specifically. Sometimes this is very confusing also. So we just want to know more about what they should consider as a myth and what would they consider as a fact. And I know that Kristen prepared an interesting presentation for that. So yeah, I will give you the floor, Kristen.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Alina. I'm really excited to have this opportunity. Thank you for this opportunity. I've been working in international admissions for about 25 years. So I've worked at a variety of institutions, actually all private, all small. But in terms of rank and selectivity, I've worked at some of the most highly ranked institutions, some institutions that are ranked out of 100. And I can tell you that, first of all, it's what you put into it that you're going to get out of your college experience. But that also, wherever you go, the education that you're going to get in the United States is going to be a fantastic education. And the rank of an institution should not factor into your search that much, and it shouldn't make you give weight or doubt to any of the institutions that you are considering. And before I go on to my next slide, I just want to say that that video that you shared was fantastic, because I think it highlighted that there are 4 kinds of institutions in the US: public, private, historically Black colleges, or other colleges that serve certain populations, maybe all women, all male, and community colleges. So there's a lot to consider when doing your search, but wherever you land, you're bound to get a great education in the United States. Just very quickly, I'll skip past my introductory slide, but I'll be sure to put my email in the chat box at the end, and I'll just dive right into our presentation. So first myth that it's more important to focus on rank or reputation than fit. Absolutely false. You really, when you do your college search, want to focus on what colleges and universities have to offer you that is going to be a good fit for you. It's going to be your home away from home for the next 4 years or so. So it's not just about going to class, getting a degree, training for a career, but there's so much that goes into your experience in the United States. So you want to go well beyond just things like major, rank, and cost, and really try to assess that fit, which I will delve a little more deeply into later in this presentation. A lot of times students start their search and they think, okay, what institutions have I heard of? Where are people going? Where can I get a list of information? I think I'll go and look at the top ranked schools and start applying to those. And as you can see, the schools with the lowest acceptance rates from US News and World Report, these are the schools that have the lowest admit rates. They're probably the most famous schools that you've heard of: California Institute of Technology, Harvard, MIT, Stanford, Brown, Chicago, Yale, Duke, Princeton, and Penn. And looking over here at these acceptance rates, they are all well below 10%. And then when you take into account being an international student who may need financial aid, the acceptance rate for international students is probably going to be even lower. So that's why you want to get rid of the idea of going to the most famous schools, highly ranked schools. And this would also be true for a lot of highly ranked small private colleges as well. They also have really small acceptance rates. So what don't rankings tell you? It's easy to get drawn in and think that the rankings are going to be the best way to put together your list. And I will go into some detail on how the rankings get put together. But the rankings don't tell you about the quality of teaching at universities. And of course, we would all say it stands to reason that teaching excellence leads to student success. So how can rankings not factor in quality of teaching? Well, they don't. Rankings tend to favor those schools that I just showed you, what we like to call the highly rejective universities. They definitely favor those highly rejective universities, and I'll give you some reasons why in just a minute. They're not official. They're compiled by presidents and staff at colleges and universities. It's kind of like peer pressure, peer ranking each other. So I'll go into some more detail about that, but suffice it to say that they are not truly official rankings. They also don't take into account student happiness, safety, and brand does not equate with quality. And if you were just to do your search by fame, brand name. An international student would be missing out on hundreds of US schools that offer amazing undergraduate programs and experiences with dedicated faculty, abundant resources, smaller class sizes. And this is a quote from a former admission officer at Yale University and Georgetown, two really selective schools. And she herself says that it's not all about fame and rank, and that international students would really do well to broaden their list and look at schools you might not have heard of yet. Rank doesn't also take into account learning outcomes and many other factors. So, as I said in that previous slide, the US News and World Report is not an official ranking system. Believe it or not, US News and World Report, which sounds so official, it's not a government ranking system. It was actually created by a man who had a magazine industry, and he came up with the idea, I'm going to sell magazines based on these college rankings. And he also had other magazines that ranked other things as well. So it really was his own business that he created. I've actually visited his office, and it was a tiny little office with just a few employees working there. And yet it's grown into this huge industry that really drives the whole kind of admission application process in terms of people's minds and where to apply. But it was designed to sell his magazine, and somehow it's just really taken off over decades. And people think that it's very official around the world, but it's actually not. So these are some of the things that go into his formulation in terms of how the ranks are created: graduation and retention rates, academic reputation. But I'm asking, who's coming up with that reputation? Because again, it's not official. So this academic reputation is really based on what other college admission, college presidents think of the other colleges and universities. Faculty resources. So, the universities that have the most money and can pay their professors the highest salaries, that's going to factor in there. And then here, admission selectivity. How many students universities reject? How many they admit? And as you saw, those highly ranked universities are admitting fewer than 10% of their students, and even smaller numbers for international students. Alumni giving factors into this. So how much money people who've graduated and donate back to their university, why would that factor into rank? But it does. Graduation rate performance, that also factors in, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. And then test scores and GPA. And as you know, nowadays, over 60% of colleges and universities in the United States are test optional. So for a full 10% of this rank to be based on test scores, when most schools are test optional, that seems a little bit unfair and a little bit skewed. So this whole ranking formula to me seems a little bit biased against institutions that have a lot of resources, that are already famous. And again, presidents are filling out the forms, and a quarter of the rankings comes from what the presidents of these universities think about each other. So a little bit of a deeper dive before I go into some more myths. When I was just talking about some of those things in that pie chart, when you factor into graduation rate and projected graduation rate, did you know that that's based on a 6-year graduation rate? And aren't you thinking, wait, isn't it just a 4-year degree to go to the United States for an undergraduate bachelor's degree? Yes. But many of these public institutions, state schools, as they're also called, it takes longer to graduate than 4 years because they're so large with such big enrollments, as many as 20,000 students, 40,000 students. Some even have 50,000 or more students. that students can't always get into the courses that they need to complete their major. And so over time, if it's going to take you more than 4 years to graduate from a public or state school, that's actually going to cost you more money in the end. And is it really saving you that much money if you can't graduate in 4 years and it's going to take you more time? So just going back here, 18%, 7% based on a 6-year graduation rate, that seems a little unfair to me, comparing all these other institutions, small private universities that make sure that you graduate within 4 years. That seems like a little bit of an odd formula to consider. Again, reputation among peers, that's whole 15% that goes into calculating those rankings. So what the other colleges think of each other, and to me, that seems like it should have no bearing on a college's ranking, and yet it does. The student to faculty ratio. Now, if you were doing your college search and you wanted to know how many students to faculty there are, that would probably be something you'd look into. You'd probably use that as a measure of the kind of education you're going for. You want to be in a class that doesn't have hundreds of students. You're probably not necessarily looking to go to a university that has a 20-to-1 student faculty ratio. I work for a very small university, 1,600 students. It's private. It's all undergraduate. And our student faculty ratio is 10-to-1. So, classes are small. But when you look here, the student faculty ratio, 1% of that is making up the rank. To me, that really indicates that there's something a little bit wrong with the ranking methodology if they're not even taking into account the value of the student faculty ratio. Oops, it looks like the slide stream might be a little bit lagging behind. So I'll just keep this up here for another second. All right, let's move on to the next slide here. Looks like it's taking a minute to load. Oh, that's because there's a quote there. So just one other thing I want to point out quickly. The differences between colleges and universities and then ranks are often so statistically insignificant. What does that mean? That means that if you were to take a list of the schools on the rankings and pluck out the university that's ranked number 15 and compare it to a university or college that's ranked 55, or maybe even one that's ranked 105, you're not going to find vast differences in maybe student satisfaction, graduation rates, number of majors offered, what students are doing after they graduate in terms of going on to get advanced degrees or getting jobs out of their field. So it would seem that if you go to a school that's ranked in the top 10, you're going to get so much more out of it than if you go to one that's ranked 100, but that's really not true. All of those schools are going to give you a fantastic education. And so you really want to focus on other things when it comes to putting together your college search. And then the last thing I'll say about rankings is that colleges actually do things, creative reporting of metrics to present themselves in a better light. And I know because I used to work at a college that would control the number of students they admitted so that they could keep that admit rate stable so that they could seem more selective and not risk their rank changing. I don't work there anymore, but I've seen that happen at those highly selective, highly ranked schools. There is a positive aspect that I did read about in the rankings, that most colleges admit a majority of applicants, and the average acceptance rate among all ranked colleges that report admission statistics was about 70%. So if you get out of the top numbers of the rankings and you're willing to look at a wide variety of schools, good news. Most colleges admit about 70%. Now, that might not be true for international students if you're seeking substantial financial aid, but it still gives you better odds than if you're applying to one of those schools that only admits 5 or 6% of students. All right, so let's talk a little bit about fit. And maybe you've already done some research or met with advisors from Education USA or your college advisor at school if you have one. But if not, some of the things you're probably thinking about or you should be thinking about, in no particular order, affordability and cost. I would probably put that up there as one of the top things. Academics, do they offer the programs you're interested in? Is there a good student-faculty ratio? You can read a little bit about the professors' bios on the website. You can read about what students are doing for research and internship. So that is a definitely important piece of the equation. You might take into account location, size of the campus, what the campus looks like. Is it a pretty place that gets you excited to be there? And when I say location, I don't just mean big city. I mean, think about the entire United States and don't just focus on the most famous and well-known states, because there are wonderful options in all 50 states. And, the more you look at those, California, Massachusetts, New York, maybe Texas, again, those are going to probably be the places that will be the most difficult to get into because everybody is applying to schools there. So look at other states as well. My institution, Ohio Wesleyan, is in Ohio. Ohio, the state, is ranked 7th in terms of the most colleges and universities. So there's a lot to consider outside those other most famous states that you are aware of. And same with location in terms of smaller cities or college towns. So don't just think that you've got to go to a big city to have it all. Campus life, clubs, athletics, dining, student services, diversity, safety. All of those things can play that you should forget to delve a little deeply into these things as well when you're researching colleges, because it's also what you do outside of the classroom and who you get to know and how you feel welcomed and supported. That's going to factor into your success, your happiness. So think about those things as well. And when you are putting together your list and going to websites and doing research, speaking with people, maybe meeting with Education USA advisors, you want to maybe focus on some of these questions. Are any classes taught by graduate students? So at a small private institution like Ohio Wesleyan, we don't have any grad students teaching. So you will be taught by professors only who are experts in their field. Now, if you go to a large university, a public school, a state school, or even a private large university, there might be graduate students teaching. Any place that has graduate programs like master's or PhD programs, there's a good chance that there may be grad students teaching some of your classes. So think about how important it is to you to work directly with professors. Maybe have that factor into your search. See if you can dig a little more deeply and find out if most students graduate in 4 years or if students are graduating in 5 or 6 years, because that will definitely factor into cost. How large are classes? Average class size is important, but you also want to find out how big the largest classes are, because average class size doesn't really tell you a lot. But when you find out how big the largest classes are, you're going to get an idea of if you're going to be sitting in an auditorium listening to a lecture. At Ohio Wesleyan, 95% of our classes have 20 or fewer students. So all our classes are small. But I didn't go to Ohio Wesleyan. I actually went to Brown University. And even in my final year at Brown, I had classes that had 500 students. And we were just sitting in a dark auditorium listening to somebody lecturing at us, and it was not an interactive education at all. So you think about the kind of setting you want to be in. And that student in that video you just watched mentioned that she loved the seminar and the discussion. So if that's what you love, try to narrow your search and find that. Some schools you don't apply to a major. Ohio Wesleyan, you don't apply to a major. Larger universities might have you apply to a particular major, like, School of Business or School of Arts and Design. So you'll have to figure out if you are required to apply to a specific major, and is it more competitive to get into that major. Also, housing. It's a long way for you to come, and you don't want to have to worry about getting all that furniture and supplies. So having campus housing is a real help for you, and you want to see if you'll be provided housing all 4 years. Is it just the first year? Is it guaranteed? So see if you can find that on the website. The next one, don't really need to go into that too much. It's, do you have to take specific classes, or is it a flexible curriculum? How soon can you participate in activities? That has to do more with a really large university versus a small one. And think about if it's easy to meet professors and form relationships with them. Will they mentor you? Will you be able to apply your learning through internships or research? So once you're on some college websites, see how much they mention how easy it is to do an internship or research. Is it something that they're mentioning all over their website? Then it's a clear indicator that it's probably going to be something you have access to. If it's barely mentioned on the university website, it might be something that you really have to dig for. At Ohio Wesleyan, we actually guarantee internships and research for all of our students. So it's not just offered, it's guaranteed, and every student will participate in those. But at larger universities, you might really have to go a long way to get yourself those experiences and opportunities. And then other ways to figure out if it's a good fit. How will you find a sense of community? And then this last one is, what are the costs and what scholarships, if any, are available? I should probably bump that one up to the top of the list, because starting with affordability, if cost is a factor, is probably the first thing you should do, because it doesn't make sense to apply to a college or a university that doesn't have funding or can't meet your need. All right, so going back to some myths. State schools are cheaper. Oftentimes students think, oh, I'm going to apply to this state school or that state school, the California, the UC system, Penn State, Michigan State, the SUNY schools in New York. It is not necessarily true that state schools are cheaper, because they're cheaper for students who live in those states. But if you're coming from another country, they're going to charge you the full tuition price, and they may even charge additional fees for being an international student. So you really want to look at the costs before you apply. Try to make a little spreadsheet of costs. And then once you get your acceptances, definitely want to take a look at the overall cost and compare which is going to be the most affordable. State schools may not offer any scholarships for international students, whereas private institutions are more likely to offer either need-based aid or a merit scholarship. Speaking of merit scholarships are just for top students. False. Many schools that offer merit scholarships, they don't just offer them to students with those perfect GPAs or top test scores. There's often a range of merit scholarships for a range of students. So, see if you can find that information on college websites, how much they offer, see if there is a deadline, if you have to do anything extra to apply for the merit awards. But don't worry that you might not have the best GPA to qualify for a merit scholarship, because At Ohio Wesleyan, we actually give $35,000 per year to international students, regardless of their GPA. So that is great news for students who are looking for, a discount on their education. So that's good news. All right. Speaking of financial aid, colleges that admit you will meet your need. This is one, it's not necessarily a true or false. It really depends on where you're applying. So as you do your research, you want to find out, do they have need-based aid? Is there a limited number of students or percentage who get it? Is it guaranteed or is it very rare? Ohio Wesleyan, although we give $35,000 per year to every international student, we don't guarantee to meet full financial need for every student. So it breaks my heart sometimes when I have to not admit a student because we can't meet their need. So I would say rather than, just taking a chance and hoping, it can be disappointing for you to get that news as well. So maybe put that time and effort into applying to a school that will provide the funding that you need. And that's where Education USA can come in. They know the schools that do have need-based aid. So definitely reach out to as many people to advise you as possible when it comes to financial aid and scholarships. Myth, highly ranked schools will give you more personal attention. Maybe the dorms will be better. Maybe the food will be more delicious. Not necessarily. They have higher ranks, but that doesn't mean that they have better facilities or more delicious food or are going to be lavishing you with all of these special things like internships and research. You still have to go out and hustle for those opportunities at a school that's ranked in the top 5 versus the top 100. So if anything, it's probably more competitive to access those kinds of things on those campuses. So don't assume that the higher ranking means that you'll get more attention and more, special opportunities. And I said this at the beginning of the presentation, that it's what you put into your college experience that will determine your success and what you get out of it. And that's true no matter where you go. And it kind of has to do with this next myth here, that the higher the rank, the better the education. Not necessarily. You could go to one of those highly ranked, most famous schools, but, if you don't go to class all the time, if you don't study hard, if you don't seek out those opportunities to do research and internships, that doesn't mean you're going to graduate with this amazing job offer or get into, the top graduate program. You really have to put in the hard work no matter where you go, and, be proactive, advocate for yourself. And you can oftentimes get a lot out of a small institution because professors know you and they're helping you make those connections. And your education is more than just classes. It's not just about going to class, training for a degree. It's about campus life, which teaches you lifelong lessons about teamwork and relationships and respect. It's also about finding internships to connect your learning to real world experiences. If you are able to get experience doing research, either with a faculty or maybe create new knowledge in your own project. And then all of this is about developing professional readiness because employers seek candidates with real life problem solving skills. So it's not just about going to class and getting your degree. I'll skip this one and just a few more myths. Small universities mean fewer opportunities. Definitely false. As I mentioned, Ohio Wesleyan with only 1,600 students manages to give every student an internship around the world, not just in Ohio. Research, not just in Ohio or on campus, but around the world. And we have funding to help cover travel and living expenses. So definitely check out small colleges and universities. They have a lot to offer. And just a little bit about Ohio Wesleyan. If you are interested in Ohio Wesleyan, we give admission decisions in 3 weeks. We have over 70 majors, from accounting and astrophysics to zoology. We are in a small city, and we're 30 minutes from Columbus, which is the capital of Ohio. It's a beautiful campus. We guarantee housing all 4 years. And just going back to my myths now, campus size and location don't matter that much. This is a big auditorium. We don't have classes like that at Ohio Wesleyan, but when I was at Brown and many of my friends who went to state schools, this is what their educational experience was like, sitting in an auditorium. At Ohio Wesleyan, classes have maybe 12 students, 14 students, and you sit around a table and discuss. In terms of location, stick to California, New York, Massachusetts. No, there are so many wonderful places in the US to take a look at that have amazing schools that might also have a lower cost of living. And there are airports. You know, we've got an international airport 30 minutes from our campus. So don't think you have to just go to the major cities for your education. And in terms of private institutions, that first student in the video mentioned she's at a private institution. A lot of students rule them out, thinking that liberal arts colleges are for people who don't know what they want to do, or maybe they won't give you, a deep knowledge, a deep founding in anything. But that's false. You can major in STEM. You can go to law school or med school. You can double major. You will definitely get guidance from your professors in figuring out what your major is. And if you're somebody who knows what you want to major in, you can come to a liberal arts and sciences college and start working on that major from day one. So liberal arts colleges are great for people who want to connect with professors, who want to have hands-on learning, who want to do research, internships, and really engage. And they are good for STEM. Let me see if I have any more slides here. Just a few more on OWU. And here's an important thing. You don't need specific classes in high school to apply to majors in the United States. If you're applying to the UK, oftentimes you do. But in the United States, everybody can have access to any major. So let's say you've always been interested in psychology, but you never took a class in it in high school. Good news, in the United States, you can major in psychology, even if you never took a class in it. So there's a lot of flexibility in terms of choosing your major. I know we're probably at time here, so let me pause and see. Alina, do you want me to stop here so we can take some questions?
I don't think there is a need to stop. You can continue. I think it's very interesting, and I see that our audience is still active here. So I think all the points and all the myths and the facts that you have specified here are really nice. How many slides we have more? I don't know. I mean,
probably not.
Okay, please continue. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Well, speaking of majors, I also want to mention that in the United States, your major does not necessarily have to determine your career. And I know that sounds crazy, and maybe you don't want to hear that. But what that means is that, take that example of psychology. If you major in psychology, it doesn't mean you have to become a psychologist. You can work in business. You can work in hotel management. You can work in, the arts, anything with a psychology degree. The same is true with lots of other degrees. And U.S. colleges and universities have really robust career services departments that will help you get a job. So you should choose a major based a little bit on your career interests, but also what you really love. So that's good news for you. You can't do research or internships at small colleges. False. This student here, he's an international student. He majored in neuroscience, and he's pictured doing research at the Harvard MIT Broad Institute on the frontal cortex and Alzheimer's. So small colleges, Liberal arts colleges will be actually excellent places for you to do internships or research. And going back to that previous myth that I mentioned, that your major doesn't have to dictate your career. This slide, I want to point out this student here because she's a great example of that, because she majored in geography and economics. But at Ohio Wesleyan, she had all these great experiences. She interned in Beijing at the Nature Conservancy. She did research over the summer with one of our professors in Greenland on meteorological variability. She did a travel course that went to study hydropower energy and environmental alteration in Costa Rica. And even though she majored in geography and economics, she decided to go to graduate school in environmental management at Duke. And once she graduated from Duke, she got a job in London at a climate bonds initiative. So that is what I mean by your major doesn't necessarily have to dictate your career path. It actually opens up lots of opportunities for you. All right, I think this is my last slide. So things that you'll look back on. Once you're out of college, did you have professors who cared for you? Did they make you feel excited to learn, who encouraged you to follow your dreams? Did you feel supported and have your needs met? Did you find people you enjoyed spending time with who had your best interests in mind? And your housing, how did you enjoy campus life and living? Was your housing guaranteed all 4 years, or did you have to move off campus? These are some of the things that you will look back on after you graduate from college. And as you can see, none of these things have to do with rankings. So really try to focus on fit, on a place that's going to be a home away from home and have all those things that will make you feel welcomed and happy and successful to thrive. And maybe also have scholarships and financial aid, because I think that's a big important factor. And yeah, that is the end of my presentation. So hopefully there were some good nuggets of information that were helpful for you. And if there are any questions, we can take some questions now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kristen. Everything was very interesting and very relevant. I really liked all the points actually that you've mentioned here, and it wasn't only about the academic things about the ranking for the U.S. universities, but many more, like the housing, the location, and all the facts that the students would have to consider. So I think that's a bunch of information they should review and consider when they would do their research for everything that they should consider. So you really kind of eased our job. You did a resume about all the steps that they should consider, kind of in the first phase. Great. We actually also have several questions that we have prepared for this webinar, and one of them is coming from our students. So we know that sometimes this thing is very confusing for them when they would review their their options, and specifically they would get confused about the ranking and the Ivy League university. And someone asked us, is that the same or not? What can you say about that?
So, what I'll say, first of all, just generally in terms of rankings, if you were to go to the U.S. News and World Report and start searching colleges and universities, they're actually different rankings. So there are general rankings, there are university rankings, there are small liberal arts college rankings. And there are so many colleges and universities in the United States, there's over 4,000, that they kind of need to break up the different categories, because that, those 4,000 universities, that doesn't mean that they're ranked at the bottom 4,000. It's not possible to truly rank the quality of education of every school in the US. And as I tried to point out, the rankings are kind of arbitrary. So in terms of the Ivy League, they do tend to factor into the rankings and get the very high ranked numbers because they have so much money. They've developed so much fame over the years. And really, a little bit about the Ivy League. They were some of the earliest founded colleges and universities in the US. They also are called the Ivy League, believe it or not, for you think of ivy covered walls, but it was actually IV, like the Roman numerals for 4, because it had to do with athletic division that they all competed in. And it's just sort of become hype over the years that they're the most famous and the most elite institutions. So yes, they are in the top rankings because they get the most applications and they reject a lot of students. But I went to Brown. I went to an Ivy League institution. And honestly, if I could do it all over again, I would go to a small college or university because my experience was that it was so competitive to be with top students from around the world. They were always competing for everything. And it just led to a very stressful environment. It wasn't like, oh, we all got in here, let's just relax and have enjoy our education. It was like this constant need to compete. So, you got to really think about what you're aiming for. And if you are lucky enough to be admitted to an Ivy League, really think about the education that you're going to get in one of the most elite institutions where it's so competitive and everybody is just vying for the top resources.
Great point. Thank you so much. Good. The next question, and I think this question would apply to all the universities in every country or state. How much do the university rankings matter to employers? Because, for example, in our countries, in the Eastern Europe, it's very popular to think that if the university is well ranked, then it's going to be for sure you'll have the chance to be accepted to a specific job, or you'll get a better and a higher salary for a job. So what is the position of the employers in the United States?
Yeah, so I would say if you're looking for jobs back at home, certainly not every employer is going to be familiar with all 4,000 colleges and universities. So I can see why it might make sense to seek out a school that employers in your home country would be familiar with. But think about this. Once you're getting ready to graduate from a US university, you have a lot of options. You're not just thinking of going back home or staying in the United States. You actually have the world as an option. And I know alumni around the world from Ohio Wesleyan. I know alumni from Greece who have jobs in the Netherlands, a Vietnamese student who has a job in the Netherlands, an Indian student who is president of a major bank in Hong Kong. So graduates actually end up working all around the world. And I can tell you that when it comes to how much you get paid, you're not going to get paid more money because you've graduated from a highly ranked institution. That just won't factor in at all. It might get you a little bit of recognition if they see that you've graduated from a super famous college or university. But we have alums. Ohio Wesleyan's rank is probably a little bit over 100. And we have alums who work at the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, Citibank, HSBC Bank. One of our alums helped lead the IPO for Alibaba, which is probably the biggest company in China. So you can be highly, highly successful and not have gone to a super brand name, famous, highly ranked university. We have people in our career services offices who work really hard to help you find jobs. Plus, everything we do in your 4 years is giving you experience to try out different internships, job experiences, make connections. And oftentimes students who get internships find that they're offered a job. On one of the slides, you probably didn't notice, but there was a student who's an international student from Vietnam, and he had 2 internships at Facebook, and those turned into a permanent job for him. So he is working at Meta, and he got that job from doing an internship. And, Facebook is probably one of the most famous, companies in the world. And little old Ohio Wesleyan, he was able to get an internship. So, your rank of your college or university is not necessarily going to keep you back if you don't attend a top 25. And it's definitely going to open doors no matter where you go. Because as I said, it's what you put into it, and how hard you work and those connections you make during your 4 years that are going to open the doors for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kristen. And thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you very much for all this useful information. I'm more than sure that all those who stay with us now live, they really appreciated that. And for those who will watch us after, you guys can also address your question after this video. And this video is done. You can also address your question via our website. We have an email address there, so you can submit your question, or if you're seeking help, let us know. Kristen, thank you so much once again. I really appreciate your time. We really appreciate the information that you gave us today. For all those who watched us, thank you so much for being with us. Stay tuned for our next events for January. And please look on the screen. We have here a QR code that will ease very much your your work searching. So there are the events that we are still having for January. And thank you very much for allowing your time to be with us today, and for listening to us and to this interesting presentation that Kristen has prepared for us. I wish you a great evening, and I wish you a great day, Kristen, because it's morning to you. So I really hope that we will meet for another webinars, and really appreciated the help that you've got for us here. Thank you very much once again.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.